Whether you realize it or not, when you go to work with a realtor, that realtor, when you're going through that transaction or through that deal, they now become an extension of you. They're your representative, they're your ambassador in that deal or in that transaction. A lot of your communication to the seller is going to be going through the agents. In most deals, every now and then it might be a little bit different, but most transactions, all your communication with them is going to be going through those agents. And when you do something that may be hurting your chances of getting that home, sometimes the agent can step in, especially if they're a skilled agent. They can step in and make sure that that is not hurting your ability to get that home or transaction of the kind. Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offering expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. This week's episode, we'll be discussing 4 signs that your realtor might be costing you the deal. Right, signs that the real estate agent or the realtor that you have selected is doing something behind the scenes that could be hurting your chances of getting that home that you're trying to get. The National Association of Realtors did a study, and they determined that about 71% of buyers only worked or interviewed one agent, right? They often went with the first agent that they met or worked with and use them to go throughout the deal. And as you will come to find out, or as you'll come to learn with more experience in this industry, all realtors are not created equal, right? And that's going to be the case in any industry. I don't want to badmouth certain people, right? But that's the case in any field that you go in, whether it's teachers or mechanics. Every single field, you know that there are not the same level of competence. There's not the same level of skill or expertise when you look across the field. And it's no different when it comes to real estate agents. And so you really want to focus on understanding whether or not the person that you have selected to work with is really helping you get that deal across the finish line. Whether you realize it or not, when you go to work with a realtor, that realtor, when you're going through that transaction or through that deal, they now become an extension of you. They're your representative. They're your ambassador in that deal or in that transaction. A lot of your communication to the seller is going to be going through the agents. In most deals, every now and then it might be a little bit different, but most transactions, all your communication with them is going to be going through those agents. And when you do something that may be hurting your chances of getting that home, sometimes the agent can step in, especially if they're a skilled agent. They can step in and make sure that that is not hurting your ability to get that home or transaction of the kind. They may stop you from doing something that would hurt the deal or hurt the transaction. And it's the same vice versa, right? When there may be things that your agent is doing that are hurting you on the other side of the deal, and you may not even be aware of it or privy to it, because a lot of times the communication is often going between agents for both sides. And so that listing agent is going to be paying very close attention to that buyer's agent. They're going to be looking at how organized they are, how well they put the offer and the information, how skilled they are they knowledgeable about the information that they need to get that deal to the finish line. I've talked about this in the past, but most realtors, we are by nature control freaks, right? We like to have control over as much of that deal as possible. And the funny thing about real estate is that we have almost no control in the deal, right? We can't force anybody in that transaction to do anything, even though there's a ton of parties involved, right? You got the buyer, the seller, the attorney, the home inspector, the title insurance, you got all these different people coming together to make one deal or transaction work out. And the realtors are oftentimes tasked with being almost a project manager, orchestrating all these different parties to work together. And so if you have somebody who's dropping the ball, the realtor can be on top of that and helping make sure that they pull everything in order and everything like that. And so from a listing agent's perspective, we are constantly looking to make sure that the agent on the other side of that deal has their stuff together. We're also looking at it too. If the buyer doesn't have an agent, that's another whole issue or can of worms that we can get into, because now we really have to make sure that we're checking behind it. In most cases, realtors, myself included, will charge an additional fee if we end up having to represent both sides of the deal, because it is just so many other things that come into that transaction or that deal, right? So we want the other agent to be as knowledgeable and professional as possible, because we know if they aren't, it can really cause a huge headache for us down the road. And so we're going to talk about 4 signs that you need to be paying attention to make sure that your realtor isn't potentially costing you that deal. The first one is you want to check to make sure that your agent communicates clearly and quickly. Right now, quickly is subjective. I always tell people, at least within a day. Within a day, they should be able to get back to you in whatever things that you have going on. Real estate tends to move a lot slower than a lot of other industries. You don't necessarily, in many cases, need everything right there, but it is still a matter of professionalism that you respond in a timely fashion, especially if it's something that's time sensitive or there's a deadline or something in place. But if you are communicating with that agent up front before you're starting to get under contract on a home, and you realize that they're taking days to respond to you or they're not responding at all, those are things that you want to take into consideration, right? You might understand that when you go to put in an offer, submit an offer, if they have that same delay or lack of communication with the listing agent, it could really hurt your chances of being able to get that home, because now the listing agent is possibly telling the sellers, I don't really know, because they just really seem like they are moving a lot slower. They might assume that it's not the agent, but it's actually you as the buyer who's moving slowly and communicating, right? And so again, when you have someone who's acting as your representative, you want to make sure that they are communicating in a way that puts you and paints you in the best light possible when you're submitting that offer to those sellers. The second thing is that you want to know make sure that they know how to write a strong and clean offer. Offers aren't just a matter of who has the best price. It's not like an auction where whoever has the highest price wins the deal, and that's what you're trying to figure out. There are some agents, unfortunately, who treat it like that, but that's not the way it's focused. There's a lot of other terms and conditions and things that go into making an offer the strongest option available. And you want to make sure that you are working with an agent who knows how to structure those terms in a way that benefits you, but also is appealing to the seller as well. And that's something that is a skill, is an art that really has many different factors, right? How expensive is that home? What area is it in? How long has it been on the market? All of these different things factor into the best way to structure that deal. And you want to make sure that they can understand how to present the strongest offer possible. You also want to make sure that they just have the general logistics of submitting that offer in line as well, right? If there's disclosures or addendums or things like that, you want to make sure that they are on top of having those things ready. As a listing agent, there's nothing more frustrating than when we get an offer from a buyer's agent and they're missing documents, they don't have things filled out, right? They got all these different things. And as a buyer, a lot of times, most of this paperwork you're seeing for the first time yourself. And so you really can't really check behind them. And so this one's going to require a bit more legwork on your part, where you're really paying attention to warning signs in the beginning. As far as what their communication like is, how they present information that's provided to you up front, right? If they're sending emails to you that are missing attachments, or if you're noticing that a lot of the documentation they've sent you might have things that aren't filled in correctly or filled in, or blanks that are left in, you have to consider or likely make the assumption that there's a very real likelihood or a very real possibility that that's the same way that your offer is appearing to potential listing agents, right? They're sending out offers that don't have everything filled out, that could be messed up in some way. And again, that leads them to believe working with you and also working with your realtor could become a headache of a transaction, and they may see if they can go in another direction or find someone else who may be a better fit in that deal. The third one that you're focusing on is, are they organized and professional in their interactions with other agents? This is huge because, again, even though we're in competition necessarily with each other as realtors, we still have to come together and find a way to work well in that deal or in that transaction, because we're essentially working for the same thing, right? Now, granted, both of our clients have different goals in mind, but the end goal of the house transferring ownership from one person to the other, that end goal is still the same for both of us. We still want this deal to close, right? As well as our parties wanting that deal to close. And so you have to make sure that they have interactions that are not causing issues with that deal or causing issues with that other agent. And it's really difficult. This is probably one of the most difficult ones for a buyer to be able to determine, because, again, you're often not privy to all the conversations that are happening between the agents during a deal. And you also aren't privy to their interactions with agents just in the marketplace in general when they're out and about doing transactions. For all you know, they could have a reputation of being a troublesome agent, and you would have no way of knowing that, right? It's not like you can go to agent reviews and see what other agents think about different agents. That doesn't exist, right? And so this one, you're going to have to do more work and truly looking at for those warning signs and everything as well. When they're apologizing a lot for forgetting certain things, or they're scrambling to fix mistakes that could have been avoided easily if there was better prep time, those are things that you need to assume are likely to happen when they're working with another agent, right? If they're sloppy, they're sending incomplete emails, they always seem frazzled. These are things that are as well. I've talked about this in the past before, but if every time you talk to an agent outside of that deal or that transaction happened, but every time you have a conversation with them, you start to pick up on the fact that they always seem to have a dramatic deal going down, right? Like if every time you talk to them and just say, hey, how you doing? They go into this long drawn out story about, oh, this happened, and oh, I can't believe they did this. And it's just drama every single time you talk to them. If that's the case, there's a very real likelihood that it has more to do with them and their lack of preparation and their professionalism in working with those other agents. And you need to take that into consideration and ask yourself, is that a road that you really want to go down? Right? Sometimes people inadvertently mistake that for thinking that a realtor is, feisty and will fight for them and be in their corner, when in reality, that often means that you're going to have just as many headaches as the other party will as well. And so you really need to pay attention to those things and understand, like, hey, is this the representative that I want for me in this deal or this transaction? Because if they are dropping the ball, again, it's going to have a reverberating impact on the way that you are viewed when that seller is taking your offer into consideration. And then last, the fourth sign, they educate and prepare you for each step. This is crucial in being able to determine whether or not you have someone who is truly helping you through that deal or through that transaction. You should never, ever make a decision solely on the fact that your agent told you to do so, right? You need to make sure that you have at least a general understanding of why certain decisions were made, right? You don't ever want to go into and say, I have no idea why we did it that way. I just did that because my realtor told me to. That thought should never even cross your mind. That should never be something that happens to you. You need to make sure that you understand for yourself, and it is your agent's job, it's your realtor's job to be able to explain that to you in a way that makes sense. If they can't do that, it's a good chance that they probably don't understand it themselves. They need to be able to explain to you exactly why they're advising you on the decisions that they're advising you and why it's the best decision for you to make in that moment. And they need to be able to share that with you. If they cannot do that, again, it's going to cause all kinds of problems and issues for the deal. If you at any point in the deal feel like you're having to Google or figure stuff out on your own, that's probably a sign that your realtor is dropping the ball and educating you in the process. Or you feel like you had more surprises than explanations, right? You never want that to be the case, right? You don't want to be ever feeling like that has become the norm in any situation. Now, no realtor can ever promise you that there won't be surprises because, again, as I said before, we can't control everybody in that deal, that transaction. As much as we would like to, we can't. And so we always will try to do as much prep as we possibly can to make sure that the surprises that do or are likely to happen are minimal at best. Right? I have never, ever, and will never promise someone that there won't be surprises in a transaction. I will never do that because I know that I can't control everything that goes down. But the more explanation and the more time I spend educating them on the process, the less likely those problems or issues are going to pop up in my deals or transactions. So those are just 4 things to kind of get you in the mindset of really paying attention to what that deal is looking like with that particular realtor. And just as a recap, 1, you want to make sure your agent communicates clearly and quickly. 2, they know how to write a strong, clean offer. 3, they're organized and professional in their interactions with other agents. And 4, they educate and prepare you for each step of that home buying process. As I said before, the agent that you work with is your representative. They are your ambassador in that transaction. And if they are dropping the ball or not representing you in a way that is helpful, it can have catastrophic impacts in you being able to get a deal under contract. I've had deals in the past where I was representing the seller and we received an offer from a buyer and it was abundantly clear that their buyer agent was not on top of things. They were turning in stuff late. They were unresponsive. They were disorganized. They were sending in stuff that wasn't filled out correctly. And in those situations, there have been times where I've told my seller clients, you can choose this offer, you can choose to work with this person, but just understand, if I were to do that, I would likely advise you to try to get additional funds up front because I don't have a good feeling about this deal being able to go through. Whereas when you look at deals or transactions where I have an agent who is professional, on top of things, responsive, when I have those type of agents that I'm working with, if they're offering a little bit less upfront at risk, those deals, I may tell the seller, hey, they're offering a little bit less, but I feel good and confident that this person knows what they're doing. And those are just 2 situations that the buyer's agent could potentially put their client in a situation where they're having to pay more funds up front to get a house under contract than someone else, not because of anything that they did wrong, but because the agent they selected is not representing them in the best way possible. And so it really can make or break a deal and cause a lot of headaches in the transaction by who you choose to work with. And so all the things that you're doing when you're meeting with that realtor, with the initial meeting that you have with them, did they show up on time? Did they bring materials? Have they been able to explain things to you clearly and quickly? Are they responsive in a timely fashion in their emails and texts and phone calls? All these things you need to be paying attention to. And if you start to notice a pattern or trend that things are not going the right way, that might be your sign that you need to hire or work with someone else, because you don't want that to cost you when you're going to make that deal or going to make that offer on the home that you would love to have as your own. So those are just some things to take into consideration. I'm always happy to help in any way that I can, but I hope that information is helpful for you. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you all next week.